Guys, I'm just a born-bred, corn-fed Kentucky native, guys. So for me, the heritage that is bourbon, that's what the whole bourbon heritage is about. You know, it's remembering about what was put forth before you and what they had to do to put us here to begin with. So, and that's the way I just view my job, as just preserving that heritage and that history in the brand's identity.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Play Whiskey Wednesday Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you could win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select two doors at checkout, and if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
And we're back with another episode of the Bourbon Pursuit podcast. My name is Kenny, and today we are in Loretto at Maker's Mark, and I've got Ryan here with me. Ryan, how you doing?
Good, man. We're out on the road again, out in central Kentucky, driving the windy roads, taking in all the scenery. I love this part of Kentucky and excited to be here.
It was funny, on the way here, we actually were passing through all kinds of farm fields, and Ryan's got a degree in agriculture. And I'm just kind of like, well, are they just going to not have anything growing? They just have grass growing out there. He goes, Kenny, that's
no-till farming. So.
Yeah, it was something that I'm very green to, so I have no idea what I'm talking about there. But before we kick off the show, there's kind of something that I found interesting. So of course I'm on all the bourbon forums and kind of pay attention to stuff. And there was a huge debate recently of some Elmer T bottles of a 2015 release that have people have this, they said that has a muddy water aftertaste, or it tastes like cardboard. And I think the best response I saw was, it's filtered through grandma's old clothes that were found in the attic. But it's, it already says it starts with a B15. So, it's the 2015. And then the reports are that it's 264, 266, and 267 are the barrels that are the ones that have this. But Buffalo Trace has already sent a response back saying that even barrel 256 that had the quote unquote defects had no defects to them, but it was a slightly earthier and woodier and more intense, but within the original standard. So if you are have a few bottles of this year's Elmer, make sure you check those and kind of, take that information at will.
Huh. Hopefully I don't get those ones. Okay.
That's what as soon as I read that, I went right downstairs and made sure I didn't have any of those barrels. So I'm in the clear. But we'll go ahead and we'll kick today's show off. So today, very excited to be here in Loretto. We are at Maker's Mark, and today we have Greg Davis. Greg is the master distiller at Maker's Mark. So Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So one of the things that we always ask when we kick off the show is tell us about your story. Like, where'd you come from? How'd you grow up? How'd you get into what you're doing?
Guys, I'm just a born bred, corn fed Kentucky native, guys. So for me, the heritage that is bourbon, that's really what drove me this direction. So I can't really say that there was one thing that
there was
brought
no
me
first
into,
bottle or anything that was like
no, never. Never touched the stuff personally.
Yeah, right. It's like mouthwash, right? You just put it in and you spit it out, right?
Yes, yeah. You never know.
I never inhaled, says the famous quote, right? So I guess give us some background about, how did you get to where you are now? Like, when did you start with Maker's Mark, or what were you doing prior to this?
I've kind of had an interesting past, but, I guess the best thing, I really don't want to say it's about my background. It's about those who trained me and my mentors before me. I've only been at Maker's now for a little over 5 years, but my previous master distillers that I trained under, those were the ones, because that was back before this was a whole marketing thing, where they pulled people out of the distillery and you had egos and all that stuff. And I just stayed around long enough and took enough abuse that they figured out that they weren't going to beat me down. And, you know what? They opened up their minds and they opened up their hearts, because it is about having a true passion for doing what you're doing. Because you can't just come into this lightheartedly and think that, oh, hell, I'll just make some bourbon today. Mm-hmm. That's not what it's about.
So I guess let's pay some respects to those people that came before you and taught some of the things that you know. So what are some of those key things that you remember from your past of going through your mentorship that you've always kind of taken that in your daily duties?
The number one thing is you never learn anything while everything's going right.
Very true.
I think everybody can relate to that in one way or another, but really that's really how I started. I'm just a very curious person about what I have going on in front of me. And so I want to know. And it was just the way that they taught and the way that they trained, they made sure that you knew it, because the job of a master distiller is not to create or come up with all this crazy stuff. And that's not me anyway. It's to preserve what was put forth before you. Mm-hmm. And that was their motto. That was what they instilled into me. And it doesn't make any difference whether you or I or anybody else think that it is a good, bad, or ugly component of that bourbon or of that brand. It is that brand. It is that personality. And Maker's Mark really wholly takes that into effect, because think about it. In our 60 plus years of existence, how many products do we have?
Exactly. It's
maybe 3 now, 2 or 3.
And it's
four,
all the same
I think
formula.
2 come, but
it's all
the same.
there.
Yeah. But I mean, that is kind of interesting. And you did say they all come from the same mash bill, right? The same recipe. Mm-hmm. Now there is, I guess you could say, sort of a fabled past of where this wheated recipe comes from. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, like, because I know, at least from when I was here before, there's always like the rumors of like it was handed down somewhere between Stitzel-Weller and Van Winkles, and then the people beforehand, there was a kind of a shake underneath the table or something, how like the wheated recipe kind of came to be at Maker's Mark.
No, I think that it was really about listening. And the great thing about TW, it was that the fact that he listened to everybody. He didn't just listen to the Van Winkles or anybody else. He listened to everybody, and he took what he felt was the best component or best part of their process and incorporated it into make what is Maker's Mark, because it's the process that makes the product. And that is what is so unique about Maker's Mark. And everything that we do around here, it's about listening.
So with that, you're trying to preserve the history, preserve the brand and everything like that. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about maybe the two brands that maybe call it a brand. Maybe it's not, a different flavor of it. Now, of course, we know the difference between Makers and Makers 46, but give our listeners who are, when they're looking at two bottles on the shelves and they don't have any idea what the real big difference is between the two, except maybe a price tag and the different shape of the bottle.
Well, one of the great things about Maker's Mark, it is one of the only flavor-forward bourbons you're going to find. So in other words, if you were to take your tongue and fold it in half and think about that, that's your dividing line. The more forward it is, the sweeter it is. The further back it is, the more bitter it becomes, or the more tannic in nature. And when you take Maker's Mark, it will be up on that forward portion of your tongue, and you can feel your taste buds firing off. But it is a clean, crisp, mouth-watering finish. It doesn't linger. But with 46, what we do is we take that fully matured Maker's Mark. We take that barrel of bourbon out of the warehouse. What we do is we empty that barrel of bourbon out, and then we pop off the head. So we pop off the hoop so we can get the head out. We insert 10 seared 18-month-old French oak staves down inside that barrel. Put that same bourbon that came out of that barrel right back in there for another 8 to 11 weeks. And it's with that process that we get a much bigger, bolder expression of Maker's Mark. However, it is without the tannins, and it has a long, lingering finish.
No, I think that's what I really love about it, because I remember when Maker's 46 first started coming out, and that was one of the first things I went and grabbed. And it has a much different flavor profile than what you would get with the regular Makers. So it's definitely something you want to have side by side so you can really compare the difference of what you're getting out of each one. So,
it is a lot of fun drinking the two. Just, one doesn't hit you, the other one will.
Yeah.
So what made you go with French oak to put it in there? Why go with that type of wood?
And that's one of the great things. The team here, we worked with our barrel supplier. And again, it's about listening, and it's about listening to what everybody is telling you. And we worked specifically with Brad Boswell of Independent Stave with this. There's no secrets, not trying to hide anything.
They're just right down the road.
Yes. And, we kind of took a little bit out of the wine industry. But one of the things that is unique about what we did is, instead of charring these like thin little wafer boards, we actually seared them. So if you will, a guy standing with these thin, long wafer boards, sticking them in, looks like a dang pizza oven, and he's sliding these things in, and you're using radiant heat. You're not using open flame, but you're using radiant heat to kind of like caramelize those wood sugars, just like you would caramelize the sugars in an onion, because I can't stand a raw onion.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But boy, if you caramelize that thing, you cook it or you deep fry it, man, I can eat it up all day long.
For sure.
And it's the same thing. I'm not going to go out and grab a piece of wood and start chewing on it, and I don't want that heavy wood note in my bourbon anyway. But it was listening to, and it is what the team did here.
And when did Maker's 46 really come to market? What year was that?
2010.
2010. Now, that was kind of like maybe the first of maybe some kind of experimentation. I mean, are you guys doing any kind of other experimentation that maybe you're not privy to talk about it, but I mean, is there something that's always happening behind the scenes?
Again, that might be fun. But we really just don't have the capacity here at Maker's Mark to go off and do all, because you hear all this stuff about triticale whiskey and I don't know, groats. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on out there.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick to doing one thing and doing one thing really well. Mm-hmm. And I think that motto has served us very well.
And then last year, there was actually another, I guess you could say, product that got put on the shelves, and that was the cask strength or the barrel strength version of Makers. So what was I guess the motivation behind that? Was there a need in the market that needed to be filled? Was there just a new brand of consumers that are asking for it, or was it just something we're going to put this out there as the Greg Davis special and see what happens?
No, it definitely wasn't the Greg Davis special. That's I hated to see that go out, because when I used to go around and thief a sample, there's nothing like barrel strength.
Yeah,
Right.
That was my cut. I don't know why,
Right.
But no, really, we were listening to the bartenders and the social media. We would host groups here at the distillery, and we would thief a sample out of the barrel, and they would just absolutely go crazy for this. And it was really the bartenders that pushed us and pushed us and pushed us. And one of the things about Bill and Rob Samuels is the fact that they listen very well. And even Bill pays attention to social media, which is kind of fun at his age, watching him fumble through that. And it's kind of fun for me because I fumble through it as well. But, it was the bartenders that pushed us to do that. They said how great it was. And what is so unique about it is the fact that it is such a big, bold spirit, but it's unadulterated makers. It still is that mouth-watering, flavor-forward finish. But as you cut it back, you can release different components of that, and it made for great cocktails and different things like that. And so we just started letting the bartenders have a little bit. We started opening it up, and the next thing you know, everybody kind of got wind of it, and then it's all going out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember the first, I think, what was it, like a $35, like $3.75, or maybe it was $50 or something like that. Yeah, I was one of the first ones to go grab it. I think it was even here at the distillery when it first came out, and we made the trek out here to come and get some. So yeah, I definitely remember my first sip of that.
Yeah, it's a really good product. Once you're a bourbon, once you get into bourbon and fishing, the barrel proof is where it's at for me now, because you're tasting it, just like you're tasting
it's
it, pulling out,
unadulterated.
you get so much out of it. You get the taste of the barrel. It's not watered down. So like you said, you get two different ways, and I really like the barrel strengths now.
Yeah. What's amazing is filtration, of course, by definition means to remove. And when you start filtering, you're going to remove some of that mouthfeel. And that's what's amazing. When you're tasting the Cask Strength, you're tasting straight from the barrel. Anywhere can be 112, 114 proof. I don't know what the last bottling that went out. I think it went around 111.5, but you're tasting something that high proof, but yet the mouth watering effect and all those naturally occurring wood sugars that we've caramelized through our barrel aging and barrel charring process, and then through the way that we age, it just all is part of the Maker's Mark DNA. Mm-hmm. And again, it just still falls on that forward part of the tongue, even at that high proof. And that's what is so much fun with Cask Strength.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
Talk about the aging process, because you all do something unique here that most people might not know to kind of keep the flavors consistent.
Yeah, we are the only distillery left out there that still rotates our barrels. We have one of the lowest entry proofs in the industry. We go into the barrels at 110 proof. Again, guys, we have nothing to hide. We age our wood for 9 months to include no less than one summer. So what does that mean? Basically means that we store our wood for almost a full calendar year. And as any good chef will tell you, if he's going to do it barbecuing, he's not going to take green wood. Mm-hmm. He's going to take seasoned wood. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're seasoning the wood. We're not out there sprinkling pixie dust on it. Right? We're letting Mother Nature do her thing. And you're getting rid of all that sap and all that resin that's naturally occurring in there. And that's extremely bitter. And so after aging, then we're going to char our barrels to a number 3 char. Distillers, we're just all very simple people, 1 through 4 is a char level. And then we go into the barrel at 110 proof, and we will put that then on the very top floors of our warehouse for the first 3 summers. Because at the very top floor of the warehouse, it's extremely hot. Typically, right. It can be 20, 30 degrees hotter if you get the right humidity and the right summer day up on that very top floor. Well, that's why after 3 years, that barrel is going to breathe so much. In other words, you're going to send that alcohol as it gets hot. It's going to go way in deep into the wood, and you're really going to start breaking down everything that's great about that barrel. However, we want to stop at a certain point because we don't want the barrel or the wood to be the star of the product. We want the spirit that came off the still in balance with the wood. And that's why we rotate down to the bottom floor. So it's always up top first for the first 3 summers, and then it comes down to the bottom floors where it's much cooler. And that's where you get your reaction, where all of your flavors can come together.
So you get all these barrels, you rotate them now. How does the picking process start? Do you guys just have a massive spreadsheet in Excel and it says like, all right, barrel number K2, whatever, that's got all these names from Maker's Mark ambassadors. This is the one that's going in. Like how do you go through the barrel picking process?
The batch ambassador program is a little bit different. I mean, we still follow that, but yeah, for the batch ambassador program, yeah, that's something that has kind of followed that, but it still follows that same rotation, that same pattern, but we have a formula for the way that we pull from the multiple different warehouses so that the uniqueness and the consistency is going to be there between every single barrel. It's not about trying to pick the honey barrel or take some from that was way up top or, anything like that. It's about that consistency from barrel to barrel to barrel. And that's what drives us at Maker's Mark is that consistency.
So you're not taking something that has been sitting on the top shelf versus something sitting at the bottom and kind of mix them together and say, now we've got our Maker's Special, right? You kind of
That's correct.
So you take this, I guess you'd say the process of the aging of where it's laid inside the rick houses, and then those barrels are just rolled out after their time.
Yeah, just think it's always going to be up top for the first 3 years, and then it's going to spend roughly the next 3 years or additional 3 years down on the bottom. So Maker's Mark, we don't have an age statement because, again, we're not concerned about the time. We're only concerned about the taste profile. Mm-hmm. So it may be 6 years. It may be a little under. It may be a little over 6 years. But somewhere in that time period, we're going to get what we're looking for, which is that mouth-watering, flavor-forward finish.
So, I mean, with doing a bigger batch, I mean, are you sampling from every single barrel, or are you trying to say, like, we'll just do, like, every 4 or 5? Because
I wouldn't have a liver if we tried to sample. I don't think anybody in this plant would if we tried to sample every single barrel. No, you always take a representative sample from a lot or a day's entry. So you're picking some randomly throughout. That will be a representative of what that barrel and that rick or that group of barrels will be like. But again, keep in mind that, of course, we are rotating. Again, first 3 years up, and the rest of its life is down on the bottom floor. So we're always pulling just from the bottom floors coming out.
Now, how many rick houses do you have?
I think currently we have 34, and I think 35 is just about ready for occupancy. 36 is still under construction, and we're still building.
Yeah, continue to grow. But I mean, so I guess the question is Are you taking barrels from different rick houses to be able to make these batches, or are they all from same rick house?
No, you won't. Think of it like this. You don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
So you never just go into one complete warehouse and fill it up and then move to the next one. You never want to do that.
So as somebody with your privy, are you able to go to different rick houses and be able to say, like, this came from H or this came from 27 or whatever it is?
Unfortunately with makers, because of that rotation style that we have, I couldn't tell you what warehouses they came out of because it just stays consistent, and that's part of our process. Again, it's the process that's making the product.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no like barrel that you're like, man, this one like shining like more than any other I've had. Like,
the whole honey barrel thing.
That's the Greg Davis special.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I think we'll put a big X on this one.
Oh, this is the back of my truck.
Everybody turn their head while I roll this in the back of my truck now. I'll see everybody in a couple of weeks.
So is it your palate only that decides, or do you have a tasting panel?
No, it's again, guys, it's not about me. It's part of it. We have a big tasting panel here. I am part of that tasting panel, but that's it. What is unique about our taste panel is the fact that Diane Rogers, who heads our quality department, Diane has a great team, and she does a lot of blind tasting so that we, quote unquote, recalibrate our noses and our palates. Because as you age, you will find that things that you were highly sensitive to, you may not be so highly sensitive to, and you just kind of change over time. And so Diane and her group does a phenomenal job of keeping people on the panel who are highly sensitive to everything. So that's why there's so many of us on the panel.
It makes sense because I've kind of gotten used to my kids screaming, and I just watch the TV. Like I still hear that's the only noise that I hear. Right?
Yes, that's probably a good way. Yeah, you don't hear the background noise anymore. That's one of the great things about the panel. I'm still very sensitive to tannins. Still can detect must. I'm one of the few people that can still detect must, and that's a big thing for us here at Makers.
Tell me about that. Sure. Like, what's a musty kind of, I guess, flavor profile or smell or something like that?
It's slightly different from walking down into a moldy basement. There's a difference between earth and a difference between must. When I taste it, it is a very unique, acrid taste that I get. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of earthy, but I'm still able to differentiate between what is considered earthy and what is considered
the grandmother
must.
cloth.
Grandmother's underwear, I think. Yeah.
Something like that.
I have a question that this stills, like, so you read about pot stills, column stills, hammers, doublers, whatever. Can you explain like this, like what kind of still y'all use and why you prefer that still and what makes it so special?
That's very easy.
Very easy.
We are continuous column distillation. Okay. So you have a beer still, which is designed to separate all the liquids and solids from the alcohol. And the science behind distillation is all the stripping trays, your steam to feed ratios, reflux, things like that. Number of trays, tray hole size. There's just so many things. That's the science behind that. And the reason why you want to move to a continuous column system is, and I want you to think of it like this. When you're distilling on a continuous basis, you're only looking at one proof point. You're concentrating all your flavors to one proof point. When you're in a pot still, you're taking a range of flavors. So you'll start at the very high end because bourbon can't be distilled above 160 proof. So you'll start collecting at 160 proof, which is extremely light. Those are your very light, ripe fruit characters. And then I don't know how low they would go to proof. I think the first cut, they probably, I don't know, maybe they take it down to 10 proof. So think about it, from 160 to 110 proof, you've got all these flavors. You've got a light stuff. And then you've got the heads with a little bit of heart as you come into the middle of that proof range. And then at the bottom, you have your tails fraction. Mm-hmm. And then they're trying to take that and do another cut following that same thing. And you're trying to blend. But when you're on a continuous column system, you dial into the exact quality that you want every single time.
so it's more consistent.
It's consistency every single
The
time.
key word here is consistency.
Yes.
Throughout.
Yeah, anybody can do a one-hit wonder.
Right.
Anybody can do a one-hit wonder. What makes it good is being able to repeat that time and time and time again.
Mm-hmm. So I guess give us just, as we're starting to wrap up here, and people that are really intrigued by what you're talking about and being a master distiller, give us the sort of what's your day from 9 to 12 and from like 12 to 2 and then like 2 to 5. Like what does that day really consist of?
Let's back up. Let's go to 6:30 in the morning.
6:30.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm an IT. I don't wake up until I got the West Coast to worry about.
Twins, so I'm up at 6:30.
It's first thing I like to do is just come in, power up everything, power up the computer in the office, and then I immediately hit the plant. I'm walking through, I'm checking all the production records, seeing how everything's going, looking at charts, going back, looking at lab analysis on every one of our fermenters. How they're doing, how they're progressing, looking at what kind of yield to expect, because with your quality and consistency will come your yield, but we always look for that quality first. And then sometime around between 9 and 11 o'clock, I'm going to go to the tasting lab. Preferably the closer to 11 o'clock is the better. For me, and just think about it at lunchtime.
Do you start with your coffee with?
No, actually, I don't drink caffeine. Believe it or not,
I don't drink coffee either. So yeah, I just don't know if you need that pick me up in the morning, or if you just.
Unfortunately, I am a morning person. So there was a long time ago when I was on third shift. I thought I was going to die because I would be waking up about the time I was ready to go home.
Right,
and that was rough, but. The closer you get to lunch, the more heightened your sensory is, and the more you become just aware of all the flavors. So that's when I try to go over to our tasting lab, and I'll go through and I'll look at the previous day's distillation. I'll look at every single fermenter that came off the still, because we collect a sample off of those. We do a taste profile on all of those. The taste panel does. In addition to the composite, which is all of those fermenters going into one tank, we'll look at that composite as well. But for us, we're backing up. We want to come back and we want to look at it from each individual still, from each individual fermenter to see if there's a problem. Because for a small operation like this, like Makers is, it's easy for us to look at it on such a micro level and not wait till it gets to the macro level when you've got big composite tanks and going into the barrels and things like that. So, and then I'll work with Diane, with her group, and we'll go through quite a bit of data on a daily basis. Then, in the afternoons, it's, following up because we also oversee, our wet cake system, our byproduct side of that. So like to typically spend my afternoons back there helping them out, because we've installed some new equipment and just trying to make us, be able to process and handle the volume that we've kind of grown into now.
Yeah. I guess last with that, what is the volume? Like what's the average bottle count that's coming out of Makers on a day?
I think last year we did 1.8 million cases in 2015, and that growth just does not seem to stop because we actually ran Christmas Day this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that was kind of a hard one to swallow.
Right.
Yeah. We need the bourbon. You got to run Christmas Day.
All right. I guess time and a half for everyone, right?
We run every other holiday.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, Greg, definitely appreciate you being on the show today. Ryan, if you want to kind of wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Makers is, like we talked about earlier, it's one of those brands that, it's like your first high-end bourbon. I remember the first time I had it, I was like, I'm rich, I made it to the big game.
So I will say that, right? I mean, I remember just college tailgates. I mean, it was the typical thing, right? We would go and we would buy a bunch of VOB and Kentucky Tavern. That's what we would usually drink, but we'd have a few empty bottles of Makers we always kept. And when it was alumni weekend, we'd always refill the Makers bottles with that stuff. Just because, I mean, that's what we thought. I mean, we knew that at that point in our lives, that was the premium brand that we really wanted to kind of show off to some people, right? So yeah, it's always a staple to have in everybody's household is just have a bottle of Makers there.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you're not going to be changing much. So keeping it consistent, right?
No, that's we're not changing anything. The formula stays and always will remain the same.
That's good because the bottle chase is getting harder and harder to keep up with all these other things that everybody keeps coming out with. It's like these one-time runs and then everything's just crazy, right? But no, the consistency, I guess paying tribute to everybody that came before you and understanding and paying homage to all that as well is, I think, what makes it very unique. So.
That's what really that's what the whole bourbon heritage is about. You know, it's remembering about what was put forth before you and what they had to do to put us here to begin with. So, and that's the way I just view my job, as just preserving that heritage and that history and the brand's identity.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, thanks again. If you guys want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Bourbon Pursuit, and also Instagram at Bourbon Pursuit. Sorry. And if y'all have any suggestions or guests you want to hear, please let us know, and also reach out to those guests and demand that they go on our show, because sometimes they don't always respond.
Yes, we've had a few problems with people saying, "No, we just don't feel like promoting ourselves" or anything like that. But
which again, I can understand.
Yes, but Greg, thank you so much again for being on the show. It was a pleasure. Now we got Makers in the books, right? So another big distillery knocked off of our bucket list. So
hey guys, it was my privilege today. Thanks for coming out.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.